Before we dive in, what if the girl you walked past on the street, the one picking trash just to survive, wasn't just struggling, but standing on the edge of a miracle? This isn't just a story of poverty and pain. It's about purpose, power, and a second chance wrapped in the most unexpected disguise. A young woman fighting to save her brother's future. A billionaire searching for the truth. Or choosing dignity over despair. And one moment, one act of courage, that changed both their lives forever. Would you recognize greatness if it came dressed in torn clothes and dusty slippers? If this kind of true-life transformation touches your heart, type Rose in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Now lean in, because this is the story of how a girl picking trash uncovered betrayal, escaped hired mercenaries and assassins, and found a future no one saw coming. Dive in and let's begin.
Hello guys, haven't subscribed yet? Please subscribe now, hit the like button, and leave a comment to help.
Steve, usually a man of sharp suits and sharper intellect, was a wreck. His empire, built on meticulous planning and ruthless efficiency, was bleeding. Founder of MTech Logistics, leaned back in his plush leather seat, jaw clenched and eyes clouded with frustration. His empire, once sleek, precise, and growing, was beginning to rot from the inside. The weight of betrayal hung heavy on Steve's shoulders, a storm brewing behind his sharp, restless eyes. For weeks, sleepless nights had haunted the MTech billionaire, his mind tormented by the mysterious losses bleeding his logistics empire dry. Figures not adding up, products vanishing from warehouses, revenue dipping in strange waves. Someone close, someone he trusted, was siphoning money from the inventory section, leaving a trail of discrepancies that no one could explain. Audits had failed, meetings had yielded no answers, and the numbers mocked him like a riddle he couldn't solve. And that reality haunted him. He hadn't slept well in days. His dreams were splintered images of collapsing shelves, angry board members, and betrayal behind forced smiles. His once crystal-clear business instinct had fogged over with suspicion. The warehouse section especially, it reeked of manipulation. This afternoon, he couldn't bear another round of conference calls or empty reassurances. So he grabbed his car keys, told no one, and drove. Past the crowded city lights, beyond his gated mansion, until he reached a quiet park on the city's edge. There, under the shade of an ancient oak, the rustling leaves a faint, soothing whisper against the silence, he parked, turned off the engine, and exhaled for the first time all day. For a moment, silence wrapped around him like a bomb. Crickets chirped in the grass. Wind danced lazily through the branches above. He leaned back and closed his eyes, thinking, there has to be a way to catch the mole. Then something moved in the corner of his eye. He turned. Across the street, by a public trash site near a fence, a young woman was digging through the bins. Her back was to him, her frame thin, shoulders tense. She moved fast, methodically, as though every second mattered. She wasn't rummaging haphazardly. She was methodical, almost delicate, as she sorted through the discarded items. The sight was so incongruous, so starkly out of place in his world of opulent wealth and calculated power, that he found himself mesmerized. Not the usual sluggish scavenge. She wasn't searching for food. She was collecting, purposefully. There was a quiet dignity in her stance, a resilience that resonated within him, a stark contrast to the creeping paranoia that had consumed him. He watched, unseen, unheard, a strange mixture of pity and curiosity stirring within him. He felt an unwanted jolt of recognition. The same tenacity he valued in his own employees, the same unwavering focus he admired in himself, shone in her actions. He couldn't discern what she was looking for, but the intensity with which she searched held his gaze captive. He felt a strange tug in his chest, a pang of empathy so unexpected it startled him. He found himself wondering about her story, the circumstances that had led her to this desperate pursuit. Who was she? What was she searching for in the refuse of others? Steve's brows furrowed. He rolled down the window halfway. She was wearing mismatched slippers, her shorts stained and frayed. Yet, the way she knelt, head bent but unbroken, hands sifting through filth without hesitation, it stunned him. She wasn't begging. She wasn't looking around for sympathy. She was working in her own fierce, quiet way. A crushed soda can, a dented spoon, a broken wristwatch. She picked them and tucked them quickly into a nylon sack, wiping sweat off her brow with the back of her hand. Steve couldn't explain it. He should have looked away, but something about her stirred a ripple deep inside his chest. A memory? A feeling? He couldn't name it. Maybe it was the desperation in her movements. Or maybe it was the pride she carried, even while knee-deep in filth. It was like watching someone drowning, but refusing to stop swimming. His heart tugged in a way it hadn't in years. She rose suddenly, clutching her bag, her body lean with exhaustion but still driven. She glanced at a small piece of paper in her hand, a list, perhaps. Then she broke into a run. Instinctively, Steve sat up straighter. He watched her disappear down a side street toward a junkyard he vaguely knew was nearby. He hesitated, then reached for his keys. He didn't know who she was, or why she was picking trash like her life depended on it. But something told him, this girl was about to change everything. Not just his business, not just his sleepless nights, but possibly his life. She staggered into the junkyard, heart pounding like a wild drum in her chest, and dropped her nylon sack on the rusty weighing scale with a soft thud. Sweat trickled down her temple, soaking into the frayed collar of her shirt. Her fingers trembled as she wiped them against her skirt, eyes never leaving the face of the attendant behind the iron bar counter. The scale attendant, a man whose face seemed perpetually etched with cynicism, lumbered over. His eyes, bloodshot and weary, scanned the contents of the bag with a practiced, almost dismissive gaze. Barely enough, he grumbled, scratching at his stubbled chin, a sound that grated on Rose's already frayed nerves. The pronouncement hung in the air, heavy and damning. You need more weight if you want a good payout. Rose's eyes, usually bright and full of youthful optimism, pleaded with him. They held a depth of desperation that belied her young age. Please, sir, it's all I could find. My brother. He's being sent home today if I don't get the school fees. Just a little more, that's all I need. Her voice, usually a melodious hum, was now a strained whisper, trembling with suppressed tears. The man sighed, a sound that conveyed more weariness than sympathy. He knew Rose's story, at least the bare bones of it. He saw kids like her all the time, caught in the relentless grind of poverty. He gave her a smaller sum than usual, a paltry offering that barely scratched the surface of what she needed. Rose stared at the crumpled bills in her trembling hand, as if willing them to multiply, to magically transform into the sum that would keep her brother in school. Disappointment washed over her, threatening to drown her. Without another word, defeated but not broken, she turned and darted past the cluttered car park, her gaze fixed on the distant street. 45 minutes. That's all she had left. And her brother, James, was still sitting in school, waiting, hoping, not knowing his future teetered on trash. She knew one last place, a beacon of fleeting hope amidst the grimy landscape. The sprawling event center where a lavish 70th birthday celebration was in full swing. The air would be thick with the scent of roasted meats and expensive perfumes, a world away from her own reality. But it would also be littered with discarded soda cans and plastic bottles, precious refuse that could be turned into salvation. Her worn slippers slapped against the cracked pavement as she ran, uncaring of the stares and the echoes of laughter that trailed behind her. The image of her brother, James, sat in class, trying to concentrate on his lessons while the specter of expulsion loomed over him, fueled her desperate sprint. He didn't know what she was doing, the lengths she was going to for him. She couldn't let him down. As she neared the place, the music throbbed in the air, high-life beats, laughter, the clink of glasses. But to Rose, it was background noise to a countdown she could feel in her bones. She didn't care about the stares anymore. The whispers. The laughter that trailed behind her like a cruel shadow. She ran. Meanwhile, Steve, the billionaire who had been watching from the safety of tinted glass and privilege, had stepped out of his car. The air hit him with heat and dust, but he barely noticed. His eyes were locked on her. He didn't know why he followed her. Curiosity? Maybe. But it was more than that. There was something about her. The way she moved with urgency, the fierce light in her eyes. She didn't belong among the trash. She looked like a queen disguised as a beggar. A lioness crawling through thorns. And he had to see what she'd do next. From behind a catering truck parked near the center, he watched her crouch beside overflowing bins behind the event hall. The smell was thick, the heat oppressive, but she worked with the precision of a machine, snatching plastic bottles and aluminum cans like seconds ticking off a clock. A waiter, his face flushed with annoyance, tried to chase her away, yelling about her intrusion and threatening to call security. Hey you. No scavenging here. You'll spoil the party. Go away. She didn't flinch. She didn't look up. Her hands kept moving. Her elbow scraped against a jagged crate. Blood smeared her sleeve. She hissed, but didn't stop. Steve's jaw tensed. He felt something stir inside him, deep and unfamiliar. Anger. Not at her, but at a world that had forced this girl to bleed just to buy education. To pick trash to preserve dignity. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from his office, urgent reminders of meetings and deals that awaited his attention. He ignored them all. He couldn't walk away now. Rose's sack was nearly full. She pressed it to her chest like it was sacred, her arms shaking from fatigue. Her lips moved in silent prayer as she glanced at her battered wristwatch. 15 minutes left. She took off running again. Past the music, past the waiters, past the mocking glances. She didn't see Steve slide back into his car. Didn't see him follow slowly behind, never too close to alarm her, but never too far to lose her. His decision had already been made. This wouldn't end here. Not for her. Not for him. Back at the junkyard, Rose crashed through the gate, barely breathing, her shirt soaked in sweat and smudged with dust. She dropped her sack on the scale again. Her hands trembled violently as she clutched the rusted edge of the counter. The attendant looked up, surprised to see her back so soon. He had expected her to give up, to succumb to the weight of her circumstances. "You again? You're going to pass out one day," he muttered, his tone surprisingly devoid of malice. But Rose ignored him, her gaze fixed on the numbers flickering on the display. The items were weighed and priced, the attendant moving with a speed that suggested he wanted to be done with her. When she finally counted the total, her face lit up with a radiant smile that transformed her. It was just enough. She pressed the money to her chest, a tear finally slipping down her cheek. "Thank you, God," whispering a fervent prayer under her breath for this small victory, her heart swelling with relief and love for the brother she'd fought for. Without wasting another second, she darted off toward the school, feet blistered, throat dry, spirit roaring, her heart soaring with hope and relief. Somewhere behind her, Steve's car crawled forward. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. But he knew. This girl wasn't just collecting trash. She was collecting purpose, strength, fire, and maybe, just maybe, his heart. At the school gate, the security guard looked at her suspiciously. Her appearance was rough, sweaty, and smeared with dirt. But when she mentioned her brother's name, the man waved her in. The billionaire parked across the street and watched her slip through the crowd of students heading toward the bursar's office. He leaned back in his seat, nodding to himself. He had seen all he needed. Rose emerged minutes later, holding a stamped receipt. Her eyes brimmed with relief. She turned to leave when her eyes met the sharp gaze of the man across the street. She didn't recognize him, but something in his stare made her freeze. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just watched her. And then slowly, he started his engine. The next day, Rose returned to the street with her sack. She had no time to recover. Her brother's books needed replacing, and their rent was due soon. She didn't want him to know what she was doing. She told him she worked at a shop. That lie weighed heavy on her heart, but it was the only way to protect his innocence. As she approached the same trash site, something was different. The place had been cleaned, the bins were empty, and the usual dump was gone. She looked around in confusion, her mind racing. Suddenly, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. She froze. The window rolled down, revealing the same man from yesterday. "Looking for something?" he asked calmly. Rose stepped back suspicious. "Who are you?" she asked sharply. The man didn't answer. Instead, he opened the door and stepped out. "You have fire in your eyes," he said. "People don't see it, but I do. You pick trash with more dignity than some who wear designer suits. I have a proposal." Rose's heart pounded. She had no idea her life was about to change, but not in the way she expected. Rose's eyes narrowed at his words. "I don't need help," she snapped, stepping away. She had learned long ago not to trust smooth talkers with fancy cars. The man didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket and handed her a card. "When you're tired of struggling alone, call me. No strings attached." Then he got back into his car and drove off, leaving a thin trail of dust behind.
Hello guys, haven't subscribed yet? Please subscribe now, hit the like button, and leave a comment to help.
She stared at the card. No name, just a number. Her instinct told her to throw it away. But something about him, the way he spoke, the calmness in his voice, lingered in her mind. She stuffed the card into her pocket and got back to work. Her day was already running behind schedule, and bottles wouldn't pick themselves. Still, as she dug through trash, Her fingers would occasionally brush the card as if reminding her it was there. By evening, Rose dragged her tired body home. Her brother, James, met her at the door excitedly, showing her his test results. He had come first in class again. She hugged him tight, tears threatening to spill. "I'll make sure you keep going," she whispered. That night, Rose lay on her thin, uneven mattress, the sound of crickets weaving through the cracked windows of their tiny one-room apartment. James snored softly beside her, one arm wrapped around his worn-out school bag. The flickering bulb above them cast restless shadows on the ceiling, but Rose's eyes weren't on the walls. They were fixed on the small, creased card lying on her chest, the one the man in the black car had given her. No name, just a number embossed in gold, glinting faintly under the dim flicker of a naked bulb. A quiet promise. She had slipped it into her pocket earlier, thinking she'd forget it. But now, under the weight of the night, her doubts gave way to something else. Curiosity. A burning, maddening curiosity, the kind that whispered, "What if this is the chance you've prayed for? But what if it's a trap?" Her heart waged a silent war between caution and hope. The idea of trusting a stranger went against everything she'd learned growing up on the streets. Yet his eyes hadn't looked at her with pity. Not even with charity. He had looked at her like she mattered. Like he saw something no one else did. By morning, tension curled around her like smoke. She sat at the edge of the mattress, hands trembling, staring at her broken-screen Samsung phone. Her thumb hovered over the keypad. She swallowed hard. Then dialed. Once. No answer. Her stomach twisted. Maybe this was stupid. She tried again. This time, it picked up. There was silence, then a voice deep, smooth, steady. "I was expecting your call." Rose froze, heart racing. The voice was familiar and foreign all at once. It was the man from the car, but somehow closer now, almost intimate. "What exactly do you want from me?" she asked cautiously, her voice a mix of steel and fear. A pause. Then the voice returned, laced with quiet sincerity. "I want to offer you a job." She blinked. "A job? Nothing shady. Nothing secret. Just something I believe you're meant for. Come and see for yourself." Rose hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the phone. This could be a scam. A setup. Or worse. But then she glanced across the room, saw James's school uniform hanging by the door, creased but clean. She remembered the landlord's threats, the empty kitchen shelf, and her own blistered palms from digging through trash. "Where?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. He gave her an address, a location she vaguely recognized. It wasn't far, a district notorious for its opulent mansions and manicured gardens, a world away from her own. She ended the call slowly and stared down at herself, ripped sleeves, dusty jeans, calloused hands. She didn't look like someone walking into a job opportunity. But she thought of James's smile. His laughter when he won top of his class. The way he said, "One day I'll be rich, so you don't have to suffer anymore, Rose." She stood up, exhaled deeply, and grabbed the one thing that hadn't broken in her life yet, her courage. No perfume. No makeup. No plan. Just purpose. And so, with the early sun stretching its gold over the city rooftops, Rose walked out the door, heading towards something she couldn't name, but somehow already felt in her bones. The memory fueled her resolve. Indecision vanished, replaced by a steely determination. This was her chance, a desperate leap of faith into the unknown. She took a deep breath, the air filling her lungs with a mixture of fear and hope. And then, with a defiant set to her jaw, she started walking. Each step was a gamble, a prayer whispered to the uncaring universe that maybe, just maybe, this time, things would be different. Maybe this stranger held the key to a better future, not just for herself, but for James too. And that thought, that fragile hope, was enough to keep her moving forward, towards the unknown address, towards the man who waited for her, and towards a destiny yet to be written. She didn't know it yet, but this morning would mark the end of the girl who picked trash, and the beginning of the woman who was about to change everything. The address led to a tall gate guarded by men in black. One of them saw her and raised an eyebrow. "Are you lost?" Before she could answer, the gate buzzed open. A voice from inside said, "She's expected." Rose entered the compound slowly. She had never seen a place like this in real life. The floor sparkled, and the air smelled like fresh roses. She felt like an outsider, but she kept walking. The billionaire was waiting inside, dressed in a fitted navy blue shirt. "Welcome, Rose," he said, standing as she entered. She looked around the office, its shelves filled with books and awards. "How do you know my name?" she asked, wary. He smiled. I do my research. That made her uneasy. He noticed and added, don't worry. I'm not here to control you. Just to offer something better. He explained that he owned several businesses, and one of them needed someone trustworthy to help with inventory. It was simple work, counting, recording, organizing. No experience needed. The pay was more than she had ever seen in her life. Why me? She asked. There are others more qualified. He leaned forward. Because you fought harder than anyone I've seen, and you didn't ask for pity. Rose sat in silence, thinking. It sounded too good to be true. But what choice did she have? Picking trash was noble, but it wasn't enough. I'll try, she said at last. The billionaire nodded. You start tomorrow. The next morning, Rose arrived early. She had scrubbed her hands raw and wore the cleanest outfit she had. A tall woman named Isha greeted her with a clipboard. You're the new assistant? She asked, eyeing Rose skeptically. Follow me. Isha wasn't friendly, but she explained the work clearly. Boxes, ledgers, stock entries, everything had to be perfect. Rose caught on fast. Her mind was sharp, and though the tasks were new, she learned quickly. By midday, Isha began watching her with something like grudging respect. You're not bad, she muttered. Rose smiled faintly but didn't respond. She wanted to prove herself through actions, not words. That evening, the billionaire passed by the warehouse and saw her bent over a pile of invoices. She didn't notice him. He watched for a moment, then walked away with a smile. She had no idea that her quiet persistence was impressing more people than she realized. But not everyone was pleased with her presence. A woman named Veda, who had worked with the billionaire for years, noticed the attention Rose was receiving. Veda had her eye on the billionaire for a long time, and she didn't like this new girl showing up from the streets. She's just a charity case. Veda sneered to Isha. Watch. She'll mess up soon. Isha didn't respond. She had seen Rose's effort. Meanwhile, Rose's life began to change little by little. She could afford to buy James new shoes even though she told him they were from a friend. She stopped picking trash and started saving. Still, she didn't allow herself to be swept away. She woke early, worked hard, and stayed humble. It began with a quiet moment in the storage room, the air thick with the scent of dust and cardboard. Rose was sorting through a crate of inventory records, her fingers steady despite the weight of her long day. She had fought hard to be here. Picking trash had led her to this job, a fragile foothold in a world that often felt out of reach. But as she flipped through the ledgers, something caught her eye, a discrepancy, small but glaring. Numbers that didn't add up, entries that felt wrong. Her heart quickened. She double-checked, her brow furrowing as the realization sank in. A large sum of money had gone missing, hidden in plain sight. Rose brought the records to Isha, her supervisor, a pragmatic woman who had always been kind but distant. Isha's eyes scanned the pages, and her face turned pale. This can't be right, she muttered, her voice trembling. No one's noticed this before. How did you? She stopped, looking at Rose with a mix of awe and fear. You caught this, Rose. You. Within hours, the discovery reached the top. Steve summoned Rose to his office. She walked in nervously, as she wondered if she was in trouble. Steve sat behind his desk, tapping a pen rhythmically, his sharp navy suit a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in his mind. You found something no one else did, he said, his voice calm but intense. Do you know what this means? Rose shook her head slowly, her throat dry. It means someone close has been stealing from me for months. His expression darkened, a shadow of betrayal crossing his face. Rose felt the weight of her discovery settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. You're not accusing me, are you? She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Steve's gaze softened. No, he said firmly. In fact, I trust you now more than most. He instructed her to stay silent while he launched a discreet investigation, but Rose could feel the storm brewing beneath the surface. Confrontation, a war ignites. Whispers travel fast in glass-walled offices, and it didn't take long for Veda to hear the news. Veda had been siphoning money for months, fake vendor profiles, ghost inventory, padded purchase orders, all part of her meticulously crafted empire of deceit. But Rose, the trash picker turned staff, had spotted her manipulation in the system logs. At first, Veda refused to believe it. How could this girl, this charity case she'd dismissed as insignificant, unravel her carefully laid plans? But when Isha let slip that Rose noticed something strange in the ledgers, the truth hit Veda like a slap to the face. Her fake empire was cracking, and Rose was at the center of its collapse. That evening, rage boiling in her chest, Veda stormed into the storage room where Rose was taking stock, her silhouette framed by the flickering fluorescent lights that cast eerie shadows across the walls. Rose sensed someone behind her and turned, her breath catching as she saw Veda leaning against the doorway, arms folded, a cold smile on her lips and venom glittering in her eyes. "You think finding one little mistake makes you special?" Veda sneered, her voice a hiss wrapped in silk. Rose straightened, her fingers curling around the edge of the crate for support. "I didn't think it made me special," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tremble in her spine. "I thought it made me honest." Veda took a threatening step closer, her presence suffocating. "Let me teach you how this place works," she whispered, her words dripping with malice. "People like you, girls who smell like the gutter and climb in through back doors, you don't last. I will make sure of that." The threat hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. Rose's heart thudded, but she didn't back away. Not when James's school fees had been paid because she'd spoken up. Not when her life was finally changing. "Do what you must," she said calmly, her eyes locked on Veda's. "But I'm not leaving." The next few days felt like walking through a minefield. Auditors in dark suits roamed the halls, their keyboards clicking like the ticking of a bomb. Staff were questioned quietly, tension simmering beneath the surface. Rose kept her head low but her spine straight, ignoring the icy glares and whispered accusations that followed her. Then, one afternoon, she opened her locker and found a crumpled note in jagged handwriting. "Go back to where you came from, or you'll regret it." Her hands trembled as she stared at the words. This wasn't jealousy anymore, it was hate. Personal. Targeted. Dangerous. That night, as she walked home, her mind spun with questions. Who had written it? How far would they go? She stopped at a roadside buka near her home, the familiar scent of egusi stew and fried plantain offering a fleeting comfort. She bought James his favorite meal, her heart swelling at the thought of his innocent smile. At home, he hugged her tightly, his joy a balm against the day's tension. "You're the best sister," he said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. But as Rose smiled, the crumpled note burned a hole in her pocket, a reminder of the danger lurking just out of sight.
Hello guys, haven't subscribed yet? Please subscribe now, hit the like button, and leave a comment to help.
Veda's fall from grace wasn't quiet. It was the birth of a vendetta. After the audit results came in, her name was written in red ink at the top of the report. She had siphoned millions through her schemes, a betrayal so deep it shook the company to its core. In the boardroom, Steve stood beside the executives, his voice quiet but heavy with disappointment. "You betrayed everything this company stands for," he said. Veda exploded, screaming, denying, blaming. When her words failed, she hurled a stapler across the room, narrowly missing Isha, before security escorted her out, her stilettos clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. As she was dragged away, she locked eyes with Rose, her face twisted with fury. "This isn't over, you dirty little stray," she shrieked, her voice echoing through the silent halls. But Veda's threats weren't empty. She swore vengeance, her fall igniting an invisible war that turned the city into a battleground. For weeks, Rose lived in growing terror, with odd glances in the street, phone calls that went dead when answered, anonymous texts warning her to stay silent or suffer. Fear became her shadow, but this was different from the hardships she'd known. This was targeted, personal. One rainy evening, the tension turned violent. As Rose stepped out of the warehouse, two men in black hoodies followed her into an alleyway. She sensed them too late. One pinned her against the wall, while the other swung a rusted pipe toward her ribs. Her scream was swallowed by thunder as pain exploded through her body. They didn't intend to kill her, just to break her. A message from someone bitter, vengeful, and rich enough to buy violence. Bruised and battered, Rose staggered home, her clothes soaked in blood and rain. Steve was furious when he heard, offering her security, but Rose refused. "If I start hiding now, I'll never stop," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm not running. Not again." But Veda wasn't finished. A week later, James vanished. His school uniform was found dumped near a marketplace, the only clue a burner phone call with a raspy voice hissing through static. 5 million in 48 hours, or your brother's gone. And this time no police. Rose collapsed, terror consuming her. She hadn't even recovered from the attack, and now her baby brother, her only family, was in the hands of monsters. She didn't sleep, didn't eat, fighting with every ounce of strength she had left. She knocked on doors, begged former contacts, even returned to the trash heap she'd once left behind, searching for clues. Steve launched a private investigation, calling in favors, tracing burner phones, and tracking movements near the school. A break came when one of the thugs slipped, using the same burner phone to contact a known fixer already on police radar. The signal was traced to a shack on the city's outskirts. James was found inside, tied but unharmed, his bravery breaking Rose's heart as she held him, tears streaming down her face. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. "I wasn't afraid." The kidnappers were arrested on the spot, and under interrogation, one cracked, giving up the name, Veda. It was all the police needed. At 2 a.m., sirens lit up the leafy driveway of Veda's high-end estate. She was dragged out in silk pajamas, screaming about injustice, her makeup smeared, her eyes red with rage. She denied everything, until her phone was searched. Dozens of messages, transfers, a ledger of payments to handlers, and a chilling voice note sealed her fate. "Make sure she bleeds. I want her crawling." The media exploded with headlines. Former executive arrested in conspiracy to assault and kidnap. From boardroom to behind bars, jealousy turns criminal. At the station, Rose came face to face with Veda for the last time. The once powerful woman glared through the cell bars, her voice a venomous hiss. "You think you've won?" Rose met her stare, calm and unshaken. "No," she said softly. "I survived. And that's enough." Steve stood behind her, silent but proud. The war was over. Justice had spoken. In the aftermath, the winds shifted around Rose. Respect found her, first in whispers, then in gestures. Isha pulled her aside, her voice warm with admiration. "You did something big," she said. "Don't let anyone make you feel small again." Rose didn't let the attention change her. She still swept the floors before work, still handed James the best piece of meat even when there was little to share. But Steve noticed. He watched her from afar, day after day, not because she sought validation, but because she radiated it unknowingly. One afternoon, he invited her to lunch in the executive wing. Rose hesitated. Her world hadn't prepared her for linen tablecloths and glass walls, but she went. Seated across from him, her eyes lowered, she opened up slowly, her voice a quiet melody of pain and courage. She spoke of death, sacrifice, and trash heaps. Steve listened without interruption, and when she finished, he said softly, "You've been carrying too much for too long." There was something new in his voice, not just admiration, but something personal, something tender. After lunch, she returned to her desk to find a new calculator, an ergonomic chair, and a handwritten note. "For the woman who sees what others miss." That night, she smiled as she tucked it into her pocket. For the first time, she felt seen. As the company prepared for expansion, Steve insisted Rose attend a senior strategy meeting. "Why me?" she asked Isha, her voice tinged with doubt. "Because the boss says you see differently," Isha replied with a knowing smile. Surrounded by suits and briefcases, Rose felt like an imposter, until Steve gave her a subtle nod across the room. She found her voice, calm and firm, speaking about preventing internal theft with practical ideas born from struggle. When the meeting ended, an executive leaned toward Steve and asked, "Where did you find her?" Steve smiled. She wasn't found. She was standing in plain sight. Life improved slowly. Rose and James moved into a clean, warm apartment where the walls didn't peel and dreams weren't mocked. Steve began visiting more often, not always to talk business. Sometimes they shared tea, sometimes laughter. One evening, he handed her an envelope with full sponsorship for James's schooling. Rose's eyes welled up. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "Because some seeds deserve fertile ground," Steve replied. She couldn't accept it, not yet. "Let me earn this," she said quietly, returning the envelope the next morning. Steve respected her answer, but his voice was gentle when he said, "You already have." Their bond deepened quietly, through late-night project plans, unspoken glances, and flowers left on her desk with no name. When Steve told her she reminded him of someone who once saved him, Rose knew. This was more than admiration. This was a man learning to love again, and she was the reason. That night, as she tucked James into bed, his soft snores filling the room, Rose felt Steve's words linger. "You've shown integrity." His trust, his warmth, had cracked open a part of her she'd kept locked away. Though she wasn't ready to admit it, the spark between them was growing, a fragile flame in a world that still held threats. With Veda behind bars, the immediate danger had passed, but Rose couldn't shake the feeling that her journey was far from over. For the first time, though, she wasn't just surviving. She was standing. And in the quiet corners of her heart, she knew she was no longer alone. Months later, Rose sat in her own glass-walled office, her name etched in gold on the door. Steve's voice now filled her kitchen, and James's hug started every morning. People called her lucky. But Rose knew better. She hadn't been handed her destiny. She had dug it out, piece by piece, from the trash heap the world once buried her under. Now pause for a moment. After all Rose endured, scraping through trash, facing threats, and fighting for her brother's future, what truly turned her life around? Was it Steve's belief in her potential, her unbreakable spirit that carried her through poverty, or that single, daring choice to trust a stranger's offer? Now here's the real question. Did Rose's journey light a spark in your soul? If her story moved you, drop a yes in the comments to show your love. Type hope if you believe in rising from the ashes of hardship. And tell us, where are you watching from? Near or far, your voice counts. Share this story with someone who needs to know that courage can rewrite any destiny, because sometimes one brave step changes everything.
Hello guys, I hope you enjoyed our stories. Please hit the like button, leave a comment below and subscribe to our channel.